Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to my conservatory, or working from home as it's called these days. My name's Phil Jackman, and I lead on CyberNorth, Dynamo Northeast Cybersecurity Cluster, supported by Accenture and the Innovation Super Network. Excuse me. We're recognised by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and the National Cybersecurity Centre as representing the region. It's quite often on my travels, people say to me, look, it's awfully difficult dealing with the public sector. You know, how do you get in, and have you got any tips? So that'd be a good idea to put an event on today to help you do business with the public sector. Now, this is aimed primarily at cybersecurity businesses, but the rules are still the same. That whichever business you're in, it's still the same, and it could be useful for anybody who's trying to improve the services and the amount of business they do with the public sector. So today, then, I'm going to be joined by a few colleagues. Next up will be Graham Jordan from the Northeast ICT Managers, a long-time colleague of mine. I'm going to be followed then by Simon Hanson from NEPO, Northeast Purchasing Organisation, who unfortunately is not here in presence, so we're going to be able to run a video in a kind of Oscar-type way. And then Elizabeth Giugno from the Crown Commercial Service is going to give a talk. And then finally, Paul Mander from Bloom will talk about the NEPRO, the Northeast Professional Services and Consultancy. And then we'll have a roundtable conversation. So if there's any questions that you have, if you could just please put them in the chat and we'll get round to you. Okay, thank you very much. Graham, I think it's over to you first.
Thank you very much, Phil. I'll just I'll share my slides. And what I'm going to do today is just give you an overview and some insight from my experience of working in IT. I've worked and been involved with public procurement for about 20 years of that of my career. But what I should say is I'm not a procurement person. I work in IT, so I'm really sitting at the end users sort of end of the table rather than the procurement specialist who we'll hear a little bit more from later. What I should say is these aren't necessarily the views of the Northeastern ICT Partnership or Gateshead Council, where I'm based. These are my views and my experience. I want to start by just giving you a bit of an insight into how we even get to a position where we undertake a form of procurement. And as you'll know, they can take different formats. But really, it all starts with a conversation with our sort of client, our internal client. And what we're interested in is what they're after. What does that system that they want, what's the functionality, what's the service that they want, what does it do? And we go through a series of questions such as, do we need it? You're just checking the logic of where they're coming from. From an IT perspective, have we got a solution already in use within the council that we could use? So for example, if somebody wants a room booking system, have we got a one for booking squash courts that we could use? That would be the sort of example where one's sitting in corporate world, the other bit's sitting in leisure. They might not know about the two systems, but we're aware of how the two could be brought together. And in that case, we'd just probably extend the use of a solution we've already got. Often we've got systems where you can buy a module and add functionality. So we might just be able to add a module and gain what that client is after us buying in. So that again saves us even going as far as the market. We can also consider whether we want to build it in-house or whether we can build it in-house. And that boils down to capability and capacity. Do we have the nous to do it, the wherewithal, the knowledge, the experience, but also have we got the time to do it? And often these days at the moment, we just don't have the resource to build a lot of things in-house. Another big consideration is what does it cost? And this is one that maybe some of you out there aren't as familiar with, but we try to cost things over 4 or 5 years, at least over the cost of the lifetime of the project or the contract, so that something that, yes, might only cost £10,000, 4 or 5 years takes it to 40,000, 50,000. And that becomes relevant when we start talking about how we go about buying things, the thresholds we have for different procurement routes. So for example, if it's something £400 or £500, then service director is probably just going to be able to buy that. Once we get above their threshold, then we need to look at probably 4 quotes, 4 or 5 quotes, something under £50,000. So that's where the 10,000 a year starts to become relevant. And those 4 or 5 quotes, generally, we try to make sure there's a local supplier in there. I'll come back to the 4 quotes just in a moment, but obviously once we get over that £50,000 threshold, then we're into open tenders. We used to do the European Journal tenders, obviously, when we were part of the European Union. We've still got processes of that scale in place, but anything between 50 and say about 100, 120,000, then we do an open tender, and that's when that would be advertised. So if you think back about the ones that are under 50,000, where we get 4 or 5 quotes, and I mentioned earlier about a local quote in there, ideally, we need to know that you're there. And that's a critical thing for us. So yes, we could ask for 4 quotes, but if we don't know of any local suppliers, we're probably going to go wider. We're going to use some government tools, some of the government frameworks and things like that. And we'll identify some suppliers. Now, where we would go down that route, rather than using a framework, we do like frameworks. There are various frameworks like the CCS ones, we'll probably hear a little bit more about shortly. The NEPO ones, which we'll hopefully hear a bit more about. If there's a framework we can buy from, that's an easy way of doing things for us, but we still generally have to do some form of further competition to identify, if you like, the winner in amongst that. But one of the things with frameworks is we usually end up with either the framework terms and conditions, or if it's something like G-Cloud, we end up with the supplier's terms and conditions, and sometimes they might not suit us. A couple of years ago, earlier iterations of G-Cloud, you could only buy something for 24 months. So if it was something like an email system, and you think of the time it's going to take us to get onto that system, and then the time it's going to take us to get off, 24 months wasn't suitable. So again, that's another factor that would influence which way we go. Now, once we've decided which direction we're going in, and if you think about 4 quotes under 50,000, something that could be, I don't know, a new financial system that's going to be in place 5, 6 years, possibly 7 years, a new wide area network, those contracts, you're talking potentially millions for some of those contracts. So what we have to do then is develop a specification of requirements that fits, if you like, it's fit for purpose for the scale of what we're buying, because ultimately that's the level of risk for the council as well. So we want to make sure that we try to do something that's fit for purpose, and then that forms the basis of the pack of information that comes out to suppliers. And that will include the evaluation methodology, the legal pack, and so on. So by the time we get a 4 or 5 page specification bound up with all the other documentation, yes, it can look a little bit hairy. It can look like a bit of a big job, but most of the time it's not actually as complicated as it looks. So this is us in terms of where we come from a culture point of view. We have to give an even opportunity to all suppliers. So we can't favour one over another. I know we've heard it in the past, people think, oh, it's all sewn up, it's a done deal, they're going to go out and buy this one, the other. But when we do a procurement, we've got to be open, transparent, we've got to be fair, but importantly as well, we've got to be seen to be fair. So this is where this Evening Chronicle test comes in. We don't want to be on the front page of the Evening Chronicle or in the Register or on BBC Technology News because we've done something wrong. Whilst we're saying we've got to be open and even and be fair, that doesn't mean we can't build relationships and we can't form relationships with local suppliers where we get our awareness of what the market and technology and products and how that direction of travel is going. Because really, if you think about it, we're never going to buy something new if we don't know that it's there. So that's something that we can only often get from the marketplace, from suppliers, and we're really keen to get our knowledge up to speed with where the market is and where technology is. So when it comes to actually responding to tenders, one of the things that I know we've had leveled at us in the past, and people have said, well, you've put 70% on price. We know we're not the cheapest, so we're not going to bid. But what we often do is we include pass-fail questions. And by the time you've maybe included 6 to 10 pass-fail questions, we genuinely get the position where any of those suppliers that get through those pass-fail questions, there's probably very little in it between them. So it'll come down to a nuance of how they actually do it, or the experience of the staff that they put onto a job, or something like that. So don't forget, we include those pass-fails before we even get as far as quality and price. And yes, often we can go 60% quality, 40% price. We can go 70% price, 30% quality, etc. It depends what we're buying, because it all comes down to risk for us. So we want to get solutions that are least risk to the council. So when it comes to actually filling in your tender and sending it back to us, think of it as a school exam. You've got to make it easy for us to mark. We'll have told you what the mark scheme is. We'll have told you how many marks and what weighting the questions are. And so obviously, if a question's worth 1%, you wouldn't put as much effort in as a question that's worth 30%, for example. And often we'll maybe include word limits and things like that, try to stick to those. And what I would say is answer the question. More often than not, the frustration that we have is when we get stuff back and people just haven't answered the question. And it is a case of answer the question, answer all the questions, and try to put them in the same order. Don't deviate, because that just makes it hard. And if it's hard for us to even read it, that straight away is starting to push that relationship a little bit. So you just get the feel from actually, yeah, I'm not so keen. This one's not going to score as high. It's blooming hard work, for example. And please don't attach pages and pages and pages of attachments or cut and paste your brochureware into your response. And this is one we see loads. Don't leave, oh, Fred, can you fill that bit in? And you just highlight it and leave it in the response. And we've had some big tenders come back where that's been in there. And yeah, we know that different parts of the organization fill different parts in, whether you've got the sales people doing some bits or your technical pre-sales people doing some bits. But yeah, try to just proof it and make sure you haven't got, Fred, can you fill that bit in? So the key thing for us is really, please answer the questions, make it easy for us to mark, and then we can move forward on that basis. There's my contact details if anybody wants to follow up, but obviously we'll be taking part in the panel discussion to follow. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Graham, for that, and that was really good. So what you're saying is answer the question, really, is that basically is what we need. Okay, good. I am now going to show a video that Simon Hanson has put in, because unfortunately he can't join us, but let's see if this works. Somebody could just tell me if they can see what I have to put in. Can anybody see that?
Yeah, that's live, Phil.
Thank you.
It's not started yet.
Okay, let's go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Simon Hanson. I'm Economic Development and Policy Manager in NEPRO. And this afternoon, I'm going to talk about how we're helping North East suppliers to win business. So a little bit about NEPO before we get started. We were established in 1976 to deliver an ambitious collaborative procurement work programme. We work with all 12 local authorities across the North East to deliver that. We also have over 700 associate members from across the wider UK public sector using our frameworks and solutions, and that ranges from everything from the Metropolitan Police right through to the NHS and everything in between. We've got a cracking team of 30 staff who are helping deliver that here in the North East. So our aim is to become a trusted partner to the business community here in the region. So how do we want to achieve that? We want to help you to win the business and identify those opportunities. We want to support you in winning that business, and we also want to celebrate the successes that you're having as a business as well. So if I start with how we help to win the business, our NEPO portal helps you find the business opportunities across the region, locally, regionally, nationally as well. And the portal, you can set up a profile that helps to segment the opportunities that are the most relevant to you and your business. We also procure our own NEPO frameworks and solutions, and that ranges from everything from facilities management through to energy, through to professional services and everything in between. And we undertake a massive market engagement program in and around that whenever we go out to tender ourselves. We want to understand who the businesses are that are out there that can help us to deliver that, but we also want to understand how we can work together and whether we're being ambitious enough in our frameworks and solutions or whether we've pitched it a little bit too low. So we really want it to be that two-way process, so we're having a proper conversation with the business community in the region when we come to deliver those frameworks and solutions. And we publish a pipeline of our opportunities every 6 months so that you know as a business what we've got coming up ourselves and what we're delivering. And that's published on our website, so go and check it out after the presentation. Also, we want you to get in touch, not just when we're pitching our own frameworks and solutions, or whether it's just through the portal, but get in touch with the team and tell us what you're up to and how we could potentially work together, or if there's a solution that you've got that might be able to fix a regional problem or, again, a local problem as well. So do get in touch at any point, and that can be with myself or any one of the team. So after we've helped you identify where those opportunities are, we do provide that support to help you win that business as well. So we're unique as a public buying organisation at NEPO that we have our own NEPO Business Club. That business club is designed to help you to win more business. So we put on sessions that range from everything from how do I fill out a tender document right through to the more bespoke elements of a tender document. So again, when you get to that social value section, how you can best answer those questions and fulfill the contract needs, whether that's being procured locally, regionally or nationally. We also provide one-to-one support as well through our business club. So again, if you're working on a tender document that you're working on at the moment and you're getting a bit stuck on one element or another of that tender document, Gary and the team at B2B North provide that bespoke support for you and your business as well. And we have a number of sessions on a weekly basis through the business club, and all of the sessions are put up on Eventbrite. So whenever you want to join us, just sign up at that link. We also want to support the regional ambitions that we have right across the Northeast. So we're wanting to help support that local economic recovery. Goodness knows the challenges that we've had over the past year. We want to be able to use the role that we have, whether we're buying or the procurement support that we give, to help drive that local economic recovery right across the Northeast. We're also wanting to address those environmental challenges. We know that all 12 local authorities have declared a climate emergency. We also know that we have ambitious plans within the region to become England's greenest region. So how do we help use our procurement work that we're doing to be able to supplement all of that? And we do that through our simplified social value framework. So we've just been out to consultation with all 12 local authorities and suppliers and other anchor institutions to understand what the needs and priorities are for the next year. And what we've done is we've tailored our Northeast Toms model in and around that to provide the consistency for you as a supplier to know what we're looking for when it comes to social value. The reason that we embed social value in everything that we do is we want to create those local economic opportunities, whether that's putting people into work, helping them get back into the workplace, whether it's helping support the growth of apprenticeships, but we also want to use it to be able to tackle those environmental challenges. So how can we use the procurement system to reduce the climate emissions that we're pumping out from the Northeast? But more importantly, we want to be able to sweat that public pound a little bit more so that we can achieve some of those broader ambitions that we have, and the broader ambitions that you as a business have as well, so that you've got a greater opportunity to demonstrate just what you do in you and your business, that it isn't just around price, quality. Finally, we do want to celebrate the success that you have as well. So if we've helped identify where the opportunities are, given you the support to be able to pitch in for those opportunities, we also want to finish that off by celebrating the successes that you've had. And on this slide here, I've outlined a number of suppliers that we have on our own frameworks who are delivering a fantastic job for us on our behalf. So if I start off at the left there, there's Embleton Hall Dairies. They're reducing plastic waste through that milk and dairy products framework that we have, and they're doing a fantastic job at doing that. They've reduced plastic usage by a massive amount there. You can see almost 9 tons. So again, we want to celebrate those successes that Embleton Hall Dairies are having, again, through the work that we're doing. You can see there in the middle that Esh Group have done a superb job around the social value that they've delivered, increasing supplier spend, again, an opportunity for local suppliers to get involved with broader supply chains. Also bringing more people back into work, and also, as you can see, money being spent with Sunderland-based suppliers in the case of the Strategic Transport Corridor. Final example there on the right-hand side is the work that Bloom have done. Bloom have done a cracking job over the past year in creating apprenticeships, despite the many challenges that we have. So again, we want to celebrate that success of creating those opportunities, but to demonstrate that Bloom are doing a superb job in their own right as well as a business. So again, anything that we can do around that, whether it's through our social media channels or whether it's through press releases or whether it's things that we're talking to other people about, please do get in touch and let us know the successes that you've had. So that's it from me. I'll just finish off by putting up my details there. So again, there's all of my contact details. Do get in touch if there's anything that you think that we can help with, or there's ways that you you want to suggest that we could do a better job, again, I'm totally open for all of that. So please do just keep in touch, because ultimately what we want to do, as I say, is to help you win those business opportunities that exist, to give you the support that you need to be able to win those opportunities, celebrate the successes that we've had, but also to play that broader regional role of making sure that the Northeast plays a full role in the regional economic recovery and that wider national level, an up agenda or net zero strategy or whatever. But we're here and we're very ambitious and we want to help you win. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thanks. And thanks very much for Simon. It's almost as if he was in the room, so that was great. Next up, we've got using the Crown Commercial Service, and speaker is Elizabeth Giugno. I hope I've got that right in terms of pronunciation, Elizabeth.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting me along, Phil. It's Giugno. It's the month of June on all Italian calendars. So yeah, happy to be here today representing Crown Commercial Services. What I will do, I will just try and share my screen, if you can bear with me. Let me know when you can see it. Hopefully it's popping up.
Yeah, that's live now. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So yeah, I'm here today really to talk to you specifically about, how you can sell cyber security services to Crown Commercial Services. So the agenda that I'll be running through with you is our understanding of the market, the cyber market, where that currently stands, the CCS agreements that we currently have in place that we offer to the whole of government, central government, wider public sector, and specific services that they cover off. Just really want to talk through the differences briefly between a framework and a dynamic purchasing system, because you've probably recognised as suppliers that there are more and more DPSs becoming available through Crown Commercial. And also wanted to share some of the work that we're doing as an organisation to improve opportunities for SMEs and sort of break down some of the barriers that you might have faced in the past in trying to get access to opportunities and win business. So just quickly, our understanding of where the market sits at the moment, and this is from the sources listed below, 167 billion global cybersecurity market, 2 billion within the UK, and the latest figures that we have is that public sector within the UK spends roughly 800 million on cybersecurity product services. So that's our view of the world. So it's very big and it seems to be growing, probably in line with the number of attacks that are also growing and expanding. I also wanted to share some of the key challenges that we have as an organisation. I think one of the biggest areas at the moment is really around supply chain risk management when it comes to cyber security. I think it's really difficult sort of implementing consistent risk management frameworks and tools and technology to help identify where that risk is and sort of manage that ongoing. So we've recognised that there's sort of an increase in attacks at tier 2 in the supply chain. So this is an area that we really are sort of exploring quite actively at the moment with a view to potentially looking at what solutions are out there. CCS alone has, I don't know, between 20 to 30,000 tier 1 suppliers. So you can imagine the extent of the supply chain when you multiply that out. We also know that there are a lot of issues and a lot of attacks. We've recently become aware of the ones in Northern Ireland on the health service, but often it's difficult to get information on quantification of those impacts. So what is it really costing us as a public sector in productivity loss, financial loss? Obviously, if we have that, we can use that as a real compelling message to support departments in getting the right investment within their organisations. I think, a consistent approach to assessing risk in the procurement of new products, services and solutions. Again, it's, there's a lot of risk management frameworks out there. We need to make sure that people have the right capability and skills to actually do that assessment, and we're not just relying on commercial or procurement people to do that. They really need to be talking to the right people, either within the departments, or if they haven't got those skills on board, they probably need to be buying them in through our cybersecurity services agreement to make sure they've got that skill set behind that decision making. The downstream benefits of investing in cyber resilience are not always obvious, and it is, a lot of it's around risk mitigation, and it's often, risk is often an area that's pushed to the bottom of agendas, at board meetings, but really I think this is a very critical area for the public sector to manage effectively going forward. And the supply market, it's large, it's complex, it's rapidly evolving. It's quite difficult as a category specialist to keep up with all of the latest changes and the trends in technology. So that's our view of the market. I just wanted to provide some detail around, what Crown Commercial has to offer our internal clients in the way of the range of frameworks and DPSs that are available to support cybersecurity needs. So the agreement that I manage predominantly is Cybersecurity Services 3. It's a dynamic purchasing system. It's competition based. It's an open scheme, so it's quite a low level of pre-qualification from a supplier perspective to get onto the DPS. We expect anybody using this within government to then run a further competition to assess capability and price. But we have found that, because of that competition, it's delivering better value than some of the other frameworks where there is, more of a direct award type arrangement in place. We also have Technology Services 2, which is really about sort of managed services. So, operational security. Again, lots of customers using that. It's a competitive requirement to use that, no direct award on that. Technology products and associated services is really where you would go to as a buyer if you wanted to buy software products. So that's working quite well. And G-Cloud, you're probably all familiar with G-Cloud. It's a pretty big agreement, a vast number of suppliers. I think it's to the tune of 5,000 and a big range of services available on there. But I think, as Graham probably mentioned earlier, you do end up, as a buyer, you do end up sometimes having a little bit more risk because you're using suppliers and their own terms and conditions on that agreement. But it's very quick speed to market to get something. I mean, you can do it within a few hours. Digital outcomes and specialists as well. That's where you would go to if you wanted to procure specialist security personnel. Although on Cybersecurity Services 3, we have just recently expanded, or in the process of expanding, our scope to cater to some fairly big transformation programs that are happening internally. So we've just added security specialists, cyber transformation, security strategy and supply chain analysis onto our DPS. So I think another thing that's really important from a CCS perspective is that we have a really close working relationship with NCSC. In fact, the Cybersecurity Services DPS is the only framework that has NCSC assured and certified suppliers on there. So, I mean, that gives buyers a little bit more confidence, I suppose, in the capability that they're buying. You can also buy non-assured services as well. And we actually work really closely with the business to develop a category strategy that supports the sort of security strategies of departments and where they're heading over the next 3 to 5 years. So just moving down quickly, what is, the difference between a DPS and a framework? And many of you might be more familiar with frameworks because they've been in existence for longer. So a framework, provides a single opportunity at a point in time for suppliers to join. They're usually quite lengthy processes, and they can take sort of an average of around 12 months from, the original idea right the way through the tender process to contract and award. They have a fixed number of suppliers at award. So after that, if the duration of the contract is 2, 3, 4 years, you actually can't add additional suppliers onto that framework during that time. The pricing is often determined upfront, and sometimes there's, links to catalogues for that as well, for direct awards. There's a range of selection and award questions, and yeah, I just mentioned direct award is permitted. So on a dynamic purchasing system, it's constantly evolving. So suppliers can join at any time, which we think is really beneficial because it allows, access for, SMEs as well at any point during the life of the DPS. It has unlimited supplier numbers. Once you've filled in your paperwork, it takes roughly 2 weeks to join. So we don't really go into very detailed assessment of capability. That is done by the customer at the time of doing the competitive call off. It has, market driven pricing because it's at call off stage. So it's not fixed at the point of award like it is with a framework. But there is no direct award. So we do have to do a competition, and we've recognised within our own cybersecurity services framework that this is a little bit of a challenge, particularly with things like incident response, where you shouldn't really expect customers to go off and do a competitive process when they're in sort of damage control mode. So that's something that we'll be looking at reviewing going forward. And I just wanted to talk just very briefly about some of the activities that we've got in place across CCS to support SMEs to, open up access to requirements, to get visibility across the government. I'm actually part of an SME working group myself, and I represent the software and cyber team on that working group. So some of the things obviously that we're looking at doing is, around paying suppliers on time. We recognise how difficult cash flow can be in some organisations. Improving visibility of tenders on our solution, so that's more accessible. And we're also removing barriers to sort of get SMEs more visibility and ability to advertise their services across the public sector. So, we've put an action plan in place, and it's just going through Cabinet Office at the moment, but it's specifically to encourage SMEs within Crown Commercial Services on our framework. So there's a lot of activity. It's being managed more proactively. And yeah, happy to obviously take any feedback or questions on what we're doing in that area later on. So that's really the end of my presentation, and there's just some contact details there in case anybody wants to get in touch about anything. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Elizabeth, and sorry about mispronouncing your name, Giugno. I'll remember it next time. That's right, excellent. And the last speaker is Paul Mander from Bloom. Paul, are you there? Well, you're on mute.
Hello, there we are. I'm trying to do 2 things at once, so that will teach me. I'm just trying to share my screen, so just bear with me 2 seconds, and I'll just want to pop a couple of slides up, and I realise that I'm kind of last. If someone could just give me the nod that you can see what's going on, that'd be great.
Yeah, they're live. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Paul Mander. I'm Procurement Director at Bloom Procurement Services. So it's been really interesting, actually, hearing from Simon at NEPO, who are our kind of partners in delivering the NEPRO 3 framework, which I'm going to talk a bit about today, but also kind of hearing the kind of CCS angle on cybersecurity. So I will talk a little bit about that too, in the context of Bloom and the sorts of services that we provide, and how we are supporting the SME community in that space and across broader kind of professional services. So if I just move on, so essentially what Bloom are is a marketplace. So we are a dynamic supply chain, not to be confused with a DPS, which Elizabeth mentioned in her presentation. We are the only supplier on the NEPRO 3 professional services framework. And what we provide is a fully managed service to the public sector. So what that means in practice is that buying organisations come to us, they come to Bloom, and they say, I've got this problem, I've got this thing that I need to solve. How do I do that? And we actually work with them to develop a specification. We identify suppliers who are in that space, whether they are part of the Bloom marketplace or not. And what we do is we put contractual documentation in place for you under the NEPRO framework that allows public sector to buy from our supplier marketplace. So, Graham actually mentioned in his presentation the points around kind of fairness and transparency, and that is everything that we do at Bloom is all about that. From our perspective, all of our suppliers are kind of pre-approved. So actually we go through a process with every supplier that comes onto our marketplace to ensure that actually you meet the requirements to deliver services into the public sector. And then what we do is we kind of work to identify those suppliers that might fit in a particular space. And we will run a competition to find the best supplier for the buyer that's come to us. So if we were talking about a cybersecurity opportunity, then what we would do is we would interrogate our marketplace, identify the suppliers that are accredited with Bloom who can provide cybersecurity, and we would go out and ask the question about whether they would be able to do that for that particular public sector buyer. Now that is kind of one area that we operate in, but I thought I'd just give you a bit of an overview on the NEPRO 3 arrangement. So as I said before, Simon and the team at NEPO went through a full, obviously we don't need to do it now, Graham alluded to that, but that full kind of ODU process, which was about establishing a framework for a neutral vendor for professional services. Bloom was successful, and what that's meant is that we are able to work with the UK public sector to deliver a fully compliant route to market for professional services spend. We have suppliers of all sizes within our marketplace, and a couple of interesting statistics, which I know Elizabeth also kind of mentioned, but actually from our perspective, SMEs are absolutely the kind of bedrock of what we do. So around about 89% of suppliers accredited with Bloom are SMEs. And over 70% of our projects are delivered by SMEs as well. And the great thing about it, I think, from a public sector point of view, is that they are able to take advantage of some of the fantastic skills that are available through the SME community. And from our perspective too, we are absolutely keen on promoting innovation. So actually we know how quickly markets change. We know that new solutions come out all the time, and actually through NEPO and through the NEPRO framework we are able to adapt to meet those requirements from the public sector, but also to give those organisations delivering that sort of innovation the opportunity to do so. So we're really able to kind of support that evolving marketplace. I also mentioned that, and it was mentioned earlier about kind of thresholds around, when there was a need to come out to market. So the thing that's really important to get across from a Bloom perspective is that we are able to run a competition for a local authority in the southwest, or a central government department in London, or a school in the northwest. And every time we run a competition, it is consistent across all of the buyers that we have. So what that means from a supplier perspective is that you get used to the way in which Bloom operate, used to the way in which we procure new suppliers, new projects. And what that means is you can improve and generally improve your chances of winning business. So we are all about kind of supporting our marketplace to improve, helping you to kind of get feedback, making sure that we're giving you feedback on kind of where you're not successful, and also just giving you the opportunity to bid for work that you may not have otherwise known about. And that's really important to us too. Just from a buyer perspective, we run the competition on their behalf. So actually, local authority A comes to us with their issue. They say, I want to do something around here. We help them with that process, but we also run that process. So you, in this environment, become a subcontractor of Bloom, although all of the delivery is done directly by you to the public sector buyer. So we are kind of facilitating that relationship, but the delivery is absolutely done by you directly. So just to give a kind of overview of what we're about, we've got close to kind of 400 public sector buyers that we work with. So that's 400 organisations picking up the phone to us and asking us about potential projects. We've got over 2,000 suppliers, and I've said, 90% of those are SMEs. We cover 20 service categories in professional services, which I'll just run through briefly in a moment. And we've got a really strong track record here. So actually, we've delivered over 7,000 projects. We've been around since 2013, but actually a significant proportion of what we've done has been done in the last 3 years or so, to a value of projects of over £500 million now. And from a Northeast perspective, we like to think that we're a really good Northeast success story, because we're based in Gateshead. We employ a lot of our employees are Northeast based as well. And actually, we were recognised through the Northeast Business Awards last year for high growth and ambition. So actually, even through the pandemic, we've been able to continue our growth and also continue to support SMEs through that time. A few examples of that, for us, we're very much kind of champions of social values. Hanson alluded to that in his video earlier, where we've won an award with NEPO for the social value delivered through the programme, through the NEPRO framework. And during the pandemic, actually, we were accelerating our payments to our supply chain. We were acknowledging actually SMEs in particular were really struggling with cash flow, and actually we reduced our payment terms to under 14 days in a lot of cases to just maintain their cash flow. So we know that was to just try and keep things moving, because we just knew how difficult it was. Just in terms of the categories, kind of before I wrap up, we operate across all of these areas. So as you can see, it's very diverse: asset management, business strategy, all the way through to kind of social care, safeguarding. The key one here, obviously, from today's perspective, is around ICT, which we do offer. And within that, there are a series of subcategories that sit within it. So actually, depending on what you deliver in the kind of ICT space will depend on kind of where you sit here. But when you register an accredit with Bloom, actually you're given the opportunity to identify exactly what it is that you provide. And that just helps our team when we're looking for suppliers to potentially fulfill a requirement to be able to find you. So I'm available. I'm going to stay on the panel today. I know that the slides will get circulated, and I know this is available as a recording as well. But I'm more than happy if you want to talk to me directly or drop me a note. I can give you a bit more background about Bloom, how we operate, and what we can do for you. So look forward to hearing any questions.
That's great, Paul. Thank you very much. And if I could just ask the other people to come back, we've heard an awful lot of that, a huge amount of support there available for people wishing to deal with the public sector. A lot about fairness, about openness, about consistency. So Graham, can I just put the first question to you, please? I think we've got about 15 minutes left. Culture. I've worked in both the private and the public sector. How important is culture within the public sector in terms of procurement?
I think where we differ, and I've only worked in the public sector, but if we often, you could imagine if we were in the private sector and we wanted to continue with a supply that we've had or whatever, you might ring them up and say, look, I want to stick with you, but can you slice us 5% off or something like that for next year? just can't do that. And we know we can't do that, and that's always been the case. So we have to go out. We know we're going to go out to some form of competitive process the vast majority of the times. And as we do that, we've got to consider how different people might provide services, so that when we ask questions, we don't. So for example, I might ask somebody, leave IT aside, might ask somebody to do a courier service. And we know that some of them provide it on bicycles, some of them provide it in taxis. If we say you've got to provide it with 4 wheels, we're ruling out the bicycle-based supplier. So we've got to be careful that we don't put things into our questions and into our selection, into our evaluation, that skew the market away from things that don't really matter to us. So we've got to concentrate on the absolute core things that really matter to us when we're doing the evaluation. It's a process that takes us time, costs us money to go through. Obviously getting legal colleagues involved, procurement colleagues involved. There are ways of shortcutting that by going through DPSs, through frameworks, going to the market through partners like NEPO and CCS and others. Ultimately, though, it's a balance of where that cost effort sits with regard to risk, and how we want to handle that off. Do we want to develop something totally in-house and a spec that's sort of 3 or 4 volumes thick, or is it something that we're buying where the risk's low, we know what we're after, there's a mature marketplace, for example, and we can go with a 4 or 5 page spec in terms of the bit that matters to us within IT.
Excellent, thanks, Graham. And Elizabeth, if I could come to you, is there a difference between local authority and central government purchasing? Would you say?
Sorry, Phil, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, is there a difference between purchasing from local authorities or supplying to local authorities and supplying to central government?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we do have greater visibility, probably better relationships just naturally with central government, because we're part of, Cabinet Office anyway. So that's typically what I've experienced in the past. But we do, obviously, there's a lot of local authorities to reach out to, and we have started working more closely with them through some of their forums, and started to sort of consolidate and aggregate some of their requirements, particularly on the cyber side. I think we've done one recently for training for them, training services, but certainly it's more disparate, harder to sort of consolidate those requirements and look at them holistically. So liaising with a lot more stakeholders when you're, working with local governments.
Perhaps I could just add to that as well, because I think that's completely agree with Elizabeth. I think it's a very different group of individuals, different kind of culture as well. So we work across kind of central, local housing associations, education, the whole lot. We also work with schools, and that can be quite a complex area to deal with. And I think that often public sector buyers need some support, and actually for us, we're very much about encouraging collaboration wherever we can. So actually Graham alluded to kind of, the need to develop specifications and that sort of thing. One of the things that we try to do as an organisation is actually to standardise wherever we can. So if we're talking about, and actually Elizabeth, you kind of mentioned around the NCSC assurance, actually they're the sort of things that we at Bloom try to build into kind of competitions when we're going out. So actually, if a buyer has a particular requirement, there's no reason why that might be hugely different across different local authorities. So actually, we're trying to kind of standardize that wherever we can to make it easier for suppliers. So actually, you understand what's being asked. And obviously that's coming out through Bloom, but actually we're very much the kind of facilitators of that sort of conversation.
I was going to come back to you actually, and that question I was going to ask you was really around collaboration and relationships. How important is building a relationship with your local authority or central government in terms of being able to sell to them?
Well, I mean, I think, relationships, that kind of makes the world go round, doesn't it? And people buy from people. That's kind of reality. I think it's really important to be well networked. You know, I think from and we find this across the organisations that we work with. You know, people who we have worked with previously in local government, potentially then move into central government or a housing association, and they come back to Bloom because of the service that they've received. And so for us, very much kind of customer service is absolutely at the heart of what we do. I certainly believe in that personally, and I think, you know, suppliers that I talk to, I always kind of say, well, you know, you got to treat the people that you're working with just like you want to be treated. So absolutely, yeah, I think it's crucial, notwithstanding the fact that, you know, we do go through processes. The public sector have processes that they have to go through, and actually that has to be open, fair and transparent, and actually can only be marked on what is on the piece of paper that's put in front of somebody who's evaluating. It's not marked on whether or not they like Paul Mander or Graham Jordan. It's what they get, and that's where we try to help the suppliers that are part of our community.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, Phil, if I may, Paul mentioned, you know, about it goes on what's on the bit of paper. I know years ago I was involved in something, and you know, you do inevitably know some of the suppliers. And yeah, if you don't put it down there, we can't mark it. We can't give you marks for it. And I know I was in a situation where I knew somebody could do what we were asking for, but they forgot to say so. So we couldn't work with them. And it's like, you know, come on, answer the question. We know that you're there. So yeah.
So really, Graham, what you're saying is answer the question. Is that what you're saying? And
it's the most important message. And I discussed this with some of our directors the other day, and they said the key message: answer the question. The second one, for goodness sake, don't attach all sorts of, you know, don't attach World and Peace that we've got to try and read.
Because I think sometimes what people don't realise is that the tenders can be split up across multiple people to score, and you don't get a sense of the whole document. So answer the question. But while you're on, Graham, there is a clear difference, I think, between before tender and after tender in terms of what you can say to people. Is that right?
Yes, very much. I mean, we do try to, you know, if somebody asks for a rundown of, you know, what the they'll all be informed of the outcome of the tender, and if they haven't won it, or even if they have won it, you know, there's the opportunity there for them to ask, can we just have a briefing on what the situation was. But you've got to remember as well, some of these situations, yes, there might be 3 or 4 suppliers bid, but others, we could have tens of bidders coming back for stuff. And the volume, I mean, I can remember when we used to do this on paper, and we used to have a 20-foot board table, you know, in a meeting room, just to put out all the pads, you know, the packs of papers, separate them off, either print them off, stick them in lever arch files, and, you know, there's 5 that are heading off to legal, there's 4 that are heading off to highways or whatever. And so, yeah, as you said, different people marking different bits. So don't assume everybody's always read the introduction, if you like, but obviously at the same time, we will try to obviously read the right bits. And get a full understanding of people's responses. So we won't read it in total isolation, but yes, there's very often a team involved in procurement. And again, what we do is that same team has to be involved in all of the bits of the process. So what we often find is, you know, we're locked away in a cupboard for a fortnight looking through tenders. If one of us ends up with an emergency dental appointment, it causes a problem, sort of thing. So it's people will look into it from the outside and think it's a very strange process. But again, it's all to ensure that ultimately, at the end of the day, the transparency and openness is there. Okay,
thanks, Graham. And Elizabeth, if I could come back to you next, and I hope this is a fair question. I suppose I can't mention something around procurement and not mention Brexit and whether or not the changes in our relationship with the European Union is going to affect any procurement rules. Are you aware of any changes?
I'm not aware of any specifically, but I'm sure that there are a number of changes. I mean, I think they've recently just switched some of the GDPR regulations to a UK GDPR. So I'm certain there's lots of things changing like that. I'm pretty certain that things around threshold values for what were OJUs will potentially stay the same and just be converted into pound equivalent values. But yeah, I haven't seen the full impact of what that's going to look like. Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking exactly around threshold values. So you're not aware of any planned changes at the moment, Edmund?
I'm not, but that's not to say that it's not something out there and I'm just not personally aware of them. I did hear discussions previously around keeping the same sorts of values and just converting them to pounds, but I don't know if that's been set in stone yet.
Okay, that's great.
Phil, perhaps I'll just add to that. I think some people who are kind of watching this or on the call today may have seen the green paper around public procurement and kind of proposals around what that might look like going forward. It is, I think, quite a slow burn. So I think there are the principles outlined about improvements in public procurement, you know, trying to reduce bureaucracy, increase the use of SMEs, you know, and making the best use of innovation as well. I'm kind of pleased to say, because obviously we reviewed that with great interest, and I think there's quite a lot in there that, and credit to NEPO actually, because there is quite a lot in there that arguably can be delivered via the NEPRO framework. So actually, you know, whilst we are the partners, it is NEPO's framework. So we are able to we're able to do that, and so it'll be really interesting to see what comes out. So we are absolutely kind of watching with interest.
Excellent, Paul. So there's nothing immediate. It's going to be a fairly slow burn, and I suppose also the
I think so. I mean, there was a requirement for people to submit their kind of views about the green paper back in March. I think they will take some time to interpret all of those if we consider how many organisations have done that. And I know, for example, most of those have been published by people. So actually a lot of the public buying organisations have responded to those changes. And that will take quite some time to unpick. But I do think it will be really positive for the SME market in particular, and kind of reducing some of the unnecessary bits of the process, which, you know, everything has its time where you feel like it was needed, but actually in retrospect, was it really? Like, actually, how do we make this more dynamic? How do we get the best value? How do we get innovation? How do we promote SMEs? You know, so all of those things I think will really spoken in the green paper like quite positively. So I really hope that kind of comes to fruition.
Excellent. So my last question, if it's to you, Paul, if you don't mind, and again, it might be a little unfair one, but when I was in the public, it was quite often, particularly around large systems which are embedded in your organisation, the people claimed that we bought them in perpetuity. Is that something that you come across, and is that fair?
Well, I mean, so like personally, I've worked in public and private sector procurement, so I've probably kind of seen both sides of this. So I can appreciate kind of some of the challenges of, you know, having to go through a really lengthy procurement process to procure a system which you can only have for 4 years, and when you get to the end of that, you've got to restart, well, probably 2 years in, to consider what else you need to do. So it kind of feels like a bit like well, I suppose if you look at the American presidency, you know, it's kind of first 100 days, what you're going to do in that. And after that, you're kind of, right, well, what are we going to do? Because we've got to get the midterm elections sorted out, and then we're going to be trying to get re-elected. It's kind of similar process. I think there are, and actually the green paper kind of references this around what the future of procurement, longer term procurements might look like. So actually where there may be a requirement, because for that very reason, actually put a huge amount of resource into implementing a system. So if you're only doing that for 4 years, it doesn't seem very fair and not a good use of taxpayers' money. Whereas if you can do something and justify it and say, well, actually, this is going to be 10 years because we're going to be spending a lot of money, a lot of change management. We need to really do something that's a longer term solution. So I wouldn't want to advocate kind of a longer term solution just for a longer term solution's sake. I think there's a lot of more kind of best of breed type approaches coming up. I've certainly seen that kind of smaller organizations being able to offer very innovative solutions and plugging that into perhaps more established type IT. And I think that's something that, again, we've been able to help with at Bloom. And I think that's something that I really see as a massive positive going forward. So I'm not sure if I really answered your question, Phil. I feel like I've sat on the fence a little bit, but, you know, hopefully it does the job.
all the speakers have shown that it's a much broader area than I'm thinking. It's not just a question of straight selling and buying. But anyway, we've run out of time. The hour flies by as always does. So I'd like to thank you, Graham, Elizabeth, Paul, and Simon in absentia, and Sophie behind the scenes for doing all the magic for us. And of course, thank you for attending. Look out for our next event, which I think is towards the end of June, which is around AWS and cloud computing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.